we've got another episode for you this week. Please like, share, subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes, and I hope that you enjoy this week's conversation. This episode will consist of topics around domestic abuse, domestic violence and sexual violence. If you require any support or help, please get in contact with your local domestic abuse, sexual violence organisation. In the UK, you can call the National Domestic Helpline on 0808 2000 247. And if you are listening overseas, please contact your national helpline where support, advice and guidance will be available for you. Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Conversation With. This session is slightly different. What we're going to be looking at is terminology. And terminology is very important when we are looking at the processes of domestic abuse. Domestic abuse is not just about that physical or sexual violence. What we understand and what we know about domestic abuse is that it is about power and control. And there's many elements that are often used in order to have that ultimate power and control within the relationship. The physical and the sexual violence is the overarching, but there's many different things that happen within the domestic abuse relationship. And actually what I might do in another episode is actually look at all those different elements. But for this session, what we're going to be looking at is terminology. The different terms that are often used within domestic abuse when domestic abuse practitioners are trying to highlight the behaviours within relationships to their survivors, but also about awareness to professionals of what the actual processes are. There is a process that happens before that slap or that punch. And we're going to look at those different terms today to understand a little bit more about what that looks like. Because they are often misunderstood. They're often thrown around, but we don't actually understand, or we can't correlate necessarily what that looks like for a survivor. And if we as professionals are not able to understand that terminology, then I can assure you that the survivors are definitely not understanding, whilst they're in that relationship, that emotional processing that's going on. So we'll start with trauma bonding. What is trauma bonding? You may have heard of the term Stockholm syndrome. It's very similar. Trauma bonding is about an emotional attachment between the survivor or the victim and their perpetrator. It often makes the survivor feel compelled to stay in a relationship. It is a compulsive cycle of wanting to please the perpetrator, so they're not going to get harmed physically or sexually or emotionally. So it is a step of trying to avoid setting somebody off. So looking at mannerisms, not kind of stepping away from a situation. So it's wanting to constantly please the partner, to not be verbally abused. And then what happens within that cycle of abuse is that there could be a verbal attack, an emotional attack, a physical attack, or a sexual attack. But then it's often followed by a honeymoon period. And then the cycle starts again. So the trauma bonding is very much about dependency, and having the perpetrator, the one that is harming, is also fulfilling the emotional and spiritual and sometimes physical needs of that victim. So that attachment pattern alternates between devaluing somebody and that intimacy stage. It is about the one that is consoling you, the one that is saving you, the one that is helping you is also the one that is causing that. So there's a trauma bond. So we are bonded in the trauma that is being perpetrated by that abuser. The next phase is, the next phrase is gaslighting. We often hear of gaslighting. For me, gaslighting is that crazy making behaviour. It is that manipulation that happens in abusive relationships where it is a false narrative. So the abuser convincing the perpetrator convincing the victim that their truth is actual truth. So the easiest way for me to describe that is I'm telling you that the sky is pink. You know full well that the sky is not pink, it's blue, it's got the sun in the sky today. However, the more that I tell you, the more that I convince you, and I'm very authentic, that actually the sky is pink. That the more that you tell somebody something, the more that they're going to believe it. And they are actually going to see a pink sky. And then when I turn around and say, oh yeah, the sky's pink, that person who's convinced me that the sky is pink is going, you're crazy, you're mental, you're insane, that the sky is not pink, it's blue. However, the perpetrator has just spent this time convincing me of a truth. And then when I believe that truth, actually the truth is then taken away by the perpetrator. So it's that crazy making behaviour. So it's making the victim question their judgment and reality. It makes the victim feel very unsure about their perceptions of the world, and they often feel that they are going crazy, or they are losing their mind, or that there is something wrong with them. It's a psychological manipulation of a person over an extensive period of time, and what that leads to is the victim questioning their own thoughts, the perceptions, their memories often, and can often lead to confusion, definitely loss of confidence and self-esteem, uncertainty on mental stability, and it ultimately leads to the dependency on the perpetrator, the one that is causing this gaslighting behaviour. The next one is love bombing. Now, love bombing occurs when somebody is literally bombing you with extreme displays of attention and affection. This tends to start at the beginning of the relationship and then after the abuse has happened. So it can be a very positive aspect to any relationship at the beginning. But where there is abuse, it can lead to that gaslighting and physical or sexual harm. It can be a manipulative tactic by a narcissist or a sociopath in an attempt to control. It is very common in cases of DA, domestic abuse. The perpetrator will inflict the abuse, reiterate how much they love you, and employ dramatic tactics to get you in their good books again, to keep you in that relationship. The danger is that the abuser needs that control, and then the same cycle will repeat. An abuser won't often change their behaviour, and where there is love bombing, this extreme love bombing that's going on with this cycle of gaslighting, and this honeymoon period after an abuse has happened, it is very, very dangerous, because we get confused. And then we've got the withholding and the stonewalling. And that is when emotional needs are being withheld. That could be sex, for example. So somebody is deliberately withholding sex. It is a tactic in order to communicate anger. Emotional withholding creates a great deal of anxiety in that victim because it plays into their fears of rejection, abandonment, and their worthiness of love. So when somebody is emotionally withholding, the victim will often feel a sense of rejection. And so what they will do is they will go back to trying to please their perpetrator in whatever way possible in order to regain back a little bit of that love and feel reassured within that relationship. So not all emotional abuse is verbal. So you have that verbal, the swearing, the shouting, the put downs. But actually, stonewalling is cutting off all communication by giving somebody the silent treatment. It can be for minutes, it could be for hours, or it could be for days. What the aim of that is for the perpetrator to do what you want them to do. So, for example, you are planning to go out on a Friday night with your girlfriends. So everything is fine between your perpetrator, but then on a Monday, the arguments start, and that subtle, actually, do you have to go out? Actually, I don't want you to go out. But you're kind of still in this phase of, actually, I'm going to go out, and you're planning going out with your girlfriends. And then from Tuesday onwards, there's silent treatment. No matter what you do, there is silence. You're met with silence and disdain, and you're feeling it off your perpetrator. So, but now you're feeling really rejected, and you're feeling really abandoned. So what happens? You don't go out. And then your perpetrator is giving you all of the love and all of the attention. But ultimately, he's got or she's got what they want by you not going out with your girlfriends or your friends. It is total manipulation. And it's, it does not feel good when somebody is withholding or stonewalling. So there's just a few terminologies that we often use in the domestic abuse kind of arena when we're looking at the behaviours and when we're trying to describe what's happening to our survivors who often don't know what's going on. There's many more, and what we'll probably do is over the course of the next few episodes is have a look at a few more. But those are the main ones for now that I wanted just to highlight, just for us to think about. And you've just listened to this week's episode. I hope that you've enjoyed the conversation this week. Feel free to like, share, subscribe so you don't miss out. And I'll see you next time.